Welcome to our exploration of utility and preferences in microeconomics. These two concepts are fundamental to understanding how individuals make choices about what to consume. Utility refers to the satisfaction or happiness that a consumer derives from consuming goods and services. Preferences, on the other hand, describe how consumers rank different bundles of goods based on the utility they expect to receive. In this video, we'll break down these concepts, discuss their significance, and see how they shape decision-making in everyday life. Let's start by diving into the meaning of utility and why it's so central to economic theory. Utility is a term economists use to describe the level of satisfaction or pleasure a person gets from consuming goods or services. It's a way to quantify happiness, even though it's a subjective experience. For example, eating a slice of pizza might bring you a certain amount of utility, while watching a movie might bring a different amount. Economists use utility to model and predict consumer choices, assuming that people aim to maximize their total utility given their budget constraint. This idea forms the backbone of consumer theory in microeconomics. Preferences are the way individuals rank different options or bundles of goods. These rankings reflect the relative utility each bundle provides. For instance, you might prefer apples over oranges or vice versa. Preferences are assumed to be complete, meaning you can always compare two bundles. And transitive, meaning if you prefer A to B and B to C, you also prefer A to C. These assumptions help economists build models that predict consumer behavior in a logical and consistent way. Utility can be measured in two main ways: cardinal and ordinal. Cardinal utility assigns specific numerical values to satisfaction, like saying eating pizza gives you 10 units of utility. Ordinal utility, on the other hand, only ranks preferences without assigning exact numbers. Most modern economic theory relies on ordinal utility, as it's more realistic to assume people can rank their choices rather than measure exact levels of happiness. This distinction is important when analyzing consumer choices and market outcomes. Difference curves are a graphical tool used to represent preferences. Each curve shows combinations of goods that provide the same level of utility to a consumer. If you move along an indifference curve, your satisfaction remains unchanged. The shape of these curves tells us about how willing a person is to substitute one good for another. Indifference curves never cross, and higher curves represent higher utility levels. They're essential for visualizing and analyzing consumer choices. Marginal utility refers to the additional satisfaction gained from consuming one more unit of a good or service. For example, the first slice of pizza might bring a lot of happiness, but the second slice brings a bit less. This decrease is known as diminishing marginal utility. Understanding marginal utility helps explain why consumers spread their spending across different goods instead of buying only one thing. It's a key concept for understanding demand and consumer equilibrium. Law of diminishing marginal utility states that as a person consumes more of a good, the additional satisfaction from each extra unit decreases. Imagine eating slices of cake. The first is delicious, the second is good, but by the fourth or fifth you're not enjoying it as much. This principle underpins much of consumer choice theory and helps explain why demand curves slope downward. It also influences how consumers allocate their budgets. Consumers don't have unlimited resources. Budget constraints represent the limits imposed by income and prices on what a consumer can afford. When making choices, people aim to maximize their utility within these constraints. The interplay between preferences, utility, and budget constraints forms the basis for understanding consumer demand. Graphically, budget lines show all the combinations of goods a consumer can buy with their income, given current prices. Consumer equilibrium occurs when a person has allocated their income in such a way that they cannot increase their utility by changing their consumption bundle. This happens where the highest possible indifference curve is tangent to the budget line. At this point, the ratio of marginal utilities to prices is equal for all goods. Understanding consumer equilibrium helps explain how people make rational choices and how prices influence consumption patterns. Utility function is a mathematical representation of a consumer's preferences. It assigns a number to each possible bundle of goods, reflecting the level of satisfaction the consumer derives from each. Utility functions help economists model and predict consumer behavior. They can take various forms such as linear, Cobb-Douglas, or Leontief, each with different implications for how consumers substitute between goods. Economists make several assumptions about preferences to simplify analysis. Preferences are assumed to be complete, transitive, and non-satiated. Completeness means consumers can always compare two bundles. Transitivity ensures consistency in choices. Non-satiation means more is always better, at least to some extent. These assumptions allow for the construction of indifference curves and utility functions, making it easier to analyze consumer behavior. Rational choice theory assumes that individuals make decisions by comparing the utility of different options and choosing the one that maximizes their satisfaction. This doesn't mean people are always perfectly logical, but rather that their choices can be modeled as if they're trying to get the most utility possible. This framework is widely used in microeconomics to predict how consumers respond to changes in prices, income, and other factors. Revealed preference theory is an approach that infers a consumer's preferences based on their actual choices, rather than asking them directly. If a person chooses bundle A over bundle B when both are affordable, economists conclude that A is preferred. This method helps overcome the challenge of measuring utility directly and provides a practical way to analyze consumer behavior using observed data. Utility theory helps explain the shape of demand curves. As the price of a good falls, the marginal utility per dollar spent increases, leading consumers to buy more. This relationship underpins the law of demand, which states that quantity demanded increases as price decreases, all else equal. Understanding utility allows economists to predict how changes in prices affect consumer choices and market demand. When the price of a good changes, two effects influence consumer choices: the substitution effect and the income effect. The substitution effect occurs when consumers switch to relatively cheaper goods, while the income effect reflects the change in purchasing power. Both effects are rooted in utility and preferences, helping explain how and why demand changes in response to price shifts. Perfect substitutes are goods that a consumer is willing to substitute for each other at a constant rate. For example, if you view tea and coffee as perfect substitutes, you might always be willing to trade 1 cup of tea for 1 cup of coffee. The indifference curves for perfect substitutes are straight lines, reflecting constant marginal rates of substitution. Perfect complements are goods that are always consumed together in fixed proportions, like left and right shoes. The indifference curves for perfect complements are L-shaped, reflecting that increasing one good without the other doesn't increase utility. This concept helps explain certain consumption patterns and the structure of utility functions for such goods. Quasi-linear preferences describe a situation where the utility function is linear in one good but not in others. This means that the marginal utility of one good remains constant, regardless of how much of the other good is consumed. Quasi-linear preferences simplify analysis and are often used in economic models to study consumer surplus and market efficiency. Unconvex preferences occur when consumers prefer extremes rather than balanced bundles. For example, someone might prefer either all apples or all oranges but not a mix. This leads to indifference curves that are not convex to the origin, which can result in unusual consumer behavior and market outcomes. Non-convex preferences are less common but important in certain economic analyses. Utility maximization is the process by which consumers choose the combination of goods that gives them the highest possible utility, given their budget. This principle is at the heart of consumer theory. By analyzing utility maximization, economists can predict how changes in prices, income, or preferences will affect consumer choices and market demand. Utility is not just important for individual choices, it also plays a role in welfare economics, which studies how resources can be allocated to maximize social welfare. By aggregating individual utilities, economists attempt to assess the overall well-being of society and evaluate policies that affect resource distribution. While utility theory is powerful, it has limitations. Utility is subjective and difficult to measure directly. People's preferences can change over time, and real-world decisions are influenced by emotions, habits, and social factors. Behavioral economics explores these complexities, offering insights into why actual consumer behavior sometimes deviates from traditional models. Behavioral economics examines how psychological factors influence preferences and utility. For example, people may exhibit loss aversion, valuing losses more than equivalent gains, or be influenced by framing effects. These insights challenge the assumption of perfectly rational consumers and enrich our understanding of real-world decision-making. Utility and preferences aren't just abstract concepts, they shape our daily decisions. From choosing what to eat for breakfast to deciding how to spend our free time, we constantly weigh our options and make choices that maximize our satisfaction. Understanding these concepts can help us make more informed and satisfying decisions in everyday life. Cultural background plays a significant role in shaping preferences. What brings utility to one person may not have the same effect on someone from a different culture. For example, food preferences vary widely across countries, reflecting differences in taste, tradition, and availability. Recognizing the diversity of preferences is crucial for understanding global markets. Advertising aims to influence consumer preferences by shaping perceptions of utility. Marketers use various strategies to make products seem more appealing, hoping to shift consumer preferences in favor of their brands. This interplay between advertising and preferences is a key factor in competitive markets. Technology has transformed the way we form and express preferences. Online platforms collect data on consumer choices, allowing companies to personalize recommendations and offers. This data-driven approach helps businesses better understand and respond to individual preferences, enhancing the consumer experience. Governments use utility and preference theory to design policies that improve social welfare. For example, tax policies, subsidies, and public goods provision are often evaluated based on their impact on overall utility. Understanding how people derive satisfaction from different goods and services helps policymakers make better decisions. Social media platforms play a significant role in shaping and reflecting preferences. Algorithms analyze user behavior to suggest content, products, and connections, influencing what people like and consume. This feedback loop can amplify certain preferences and trends, impacting both individual choices and broader market dynamics. Our preferences are often shaped by those around us. Peer influence can lead to herd behavior, where people make choices based on what others are doing rather than their own utility. This phenomenon is common in fashion, technology adoption, and even financial markets, highlighting the social dimension of preferences. Health-related decisions, such as diet and exercise, are influenced by utility and preferences. People weigh the immediate satisfaction of unhealthy foods against the long-term benefits of healthy choices. Understanding these trade-offs can help design better health interventions and encourage healthier lifestyles. Environmental decisions like recycling or using renewable energy are also guided by utility and preferences. Some people derive satisfaction from making eco-friendly choices, while others may prioritize convenience or cost. Policymakers use incentives and information campaigns to shift preferences toward more sustainable behaviors. Time preferences describe how people value present versus future satisfaction. Some individuals prefer immediate rewards while others are willing to wait for greater benefits later. This concept is important in understanding saving, investing, and consumption patterns over time. Risk preferences determine how people make choices under uncertainty. Some are risk-averse, preferring certain outcomes, while others are risk-seeking. Utility theory helps explain these differences and is used in fields like insurance, finance, and behavioral economics to model decision-making under risk. Utility and preferences drive market choices, from everyday purchases to major investments. Businesses study consumer preferences to develop products and set prices, while consumers seek to maximize their satisfaction within their budgets. This dynamic interaction shapes the structure and evolution of markets. E-commerce platforms use data analytics to understand and predict consumer preferences. Personalized recommendations, targeted ads, and dynamic pricing are all designed to maximize utility for shoppers and profits for businesses. The digital marketplace is a prime example of utility and preference theory in action. Entertainment options like movies, music, and games are chosen based on the utility they provide. Streaming platforms use algorithms to recommend content that matches user preferences, aiming to maximize satisfaction and engagement. This illustrates how utility and preferences shape our leisure activities. Product designers consider utility and preferences when creating new goods and services. By understanding what features bring the most satisfaction, companies can develop products that better meet consumer needs. This approach leads to innovation and greater consumer welfare. Travel decisions, such as destination, mode of transport, and activities, are influenced by utility and preferences. Some travelers seek adventure while others prioritize relaxation or cultural experiences. Understanding these preferences helps travel companies tailor their offerings and improve customer satisfaction. Financial choices like saving, investing, or borrowing are guided by utility and preferences. People weigh the satisfaction from current consumption against future benefits, balancing risk and reward. Financial advisors use these concepts to help clients make decisions that align with their goals and preferences. Housing decisions, such as renting versus buying or choosing a location, are influenced by utility and preferences. Factors like proximity to work, amenities, and neighborhood quality all contribute to the satisfaction derived from a home. Real estate markets reflect the diverse preferences of buyers and renters. Education choices, such as selecting a school or field of study, are shaped by utility and preferences. People consider factors like career prospects, personal interests, and social environment when making these decisions. Understanding these preferences helps educators and policymakers design better educational systems. Family-related decisions, such as marriage, children, and household spending, are influenced by utility and preferences. People weigh the satisfaction from family life against other goals and constraints. These choices reflect deeply held values and priorities, making them central to understanding human behavior. Charitable giving is another area where utility and preferences play a role. Some people derive satisfaction from helping others, while others may prioritize personal consumption. Understanding these motivations helps charities design effective fundraising strategies and encourages greater generosity. In summary, the concepts of utility and preferences are at the heart of microeconomics. They help explain how individuals make choices, how markets function, and how policies can improve welfare. By understanding these ideas, we gain valuable insights into human behavior and the forces that shape our world. Whether you're a student, policymaker, or consumer, recognizing the role of utility and preferences can help you make better decisions and appreciate the complexity of economic life.